Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's free webinar from UK Mediation, all about becoming an interpersonal mediator. You're very welcome to join us here this afternoon from a very chilly Derbyshire to hear all about what's involved if you decide to enter this profession and become a mediator of interpersonal disputes. Just before I start, quick introduction to me. I'm Dr. Mike Talbot. I started UK Mediation almost 25 years ago. We're about to celebrate our 25th birthday in May this year, having started the company in 1999, my goodness. I'm a psychotherapist by background and came to the field having worked with a private clinical practice and also doing organisational work and getting interested in the psychology of conflict. So UK Mediation's angle on conflict very much has grown out of my own background in psychotherapy. So we are interested in why we find it so hard to navigate our way through conflict, what's so difficult about conflict, how it impacts on us, and what we need from an impartial third party in order to try and move on from that conflict. And that impartial third party is what we call the mediator. And today you're going to hear about what it takes to become one of those mediators. So let's have a look at what's involved today. So first of all, I want to talk about interpersonal mediation, what it is and what it isn't. There's still quite a lot of myths and legends about mediation and what it involves. It's not meditation, although the word looks a bit like that. The term is very, very much misused. And if you look at a recent LinkedIn post from us, we're referencing a particular drama on the TV and then portraying a mediation in a certain way in relation to the post office dispute and all the prosecutions that have ensued from that software and their process that they offered to litigants. They're calling it mediation and it's a long way from that. So today we'll tidy that up a little bit. What is interpersonal mediation? What's it all about? Second thing I want to talk about today is a model for interpersonal mediation, how it goes. And we've got a vivid illustration of that today in terms of a cartoon actually today. And I want to talk about something that's around the corner as well, which is a live demonstration of mediation, not today, but for another time, a live in-person demonstration of what mediation really looks like in the flesh. And I'll leave you hanging on that one just to tell you about that a little bit later. And then back to you becoming a mediator, I'm going to talk about training and how you gain experience and credibility and go on that journey from selecting a training course through gaining experience and credibility and getting out there and actually doing some cases. So that's what we'll have today. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions and comments you'd like to make, and you're very welcome to do so. There's a chat box, the YouTube chat box, if you want to pop a comment or question in there, and I'll also leave a bit of time at the end in case there's something you think of at the end of the presentation, which should be in around 40 minutes from now if I keep to time. Okay, so let's get straight in there and talk about what interpersonal mediation is used for. So this broad term mediation applies to lots of different things, including things that we wouldn't even consider to be mediation, but the term has come into the popular vernacular now and people use it to refer to all sorts. But we know exactly what we mean by it. But interpersonal mediation in particular is used for workplace disputes. This is one of the biggest applications, if you like. So workplace disputes, grievance type issues, allegations of unfair treatment, low-level bullying and harassment, allegations of discrimination, communication breakdown, issues to do with management style or worker style, not so much performance issues, not stuff to do with terms and conditions, not stuff to do with people's hours and pay and so on, definitions of duties, that's something else. But in terms of workplace, it's about the relationships that we have in workplaces. Other big application for interpersonal mediation is neighbourhood work, where neighbours fall out, to do with noise, DIY and pets. We all know about that. Most of us have got neighbours, unless you live on an island. And the third one is about tenancy, in terms of problems arising between landlords and landladies and their tenants, often to do with services or repairs that have not been carried out, people holding back on rent, stuff to do with bills, utilities, condition of the property, etc. When it comes down to a breakdown in communication between the two parties, which is actually most of those tenancy disputes in our experience. The other application for interpersonal mediation is what we would call intra-family. So this is where families are trying to stay together and we are attending to the conflict within the family that might otherwise cause the breakdown of that family, or otherwise just cause poor relationships. So intra-family, where there are often adult or teenage young people falling out with parents, or where the parents are estranged, or where there are issues intergenerationally. So a lot of the intra-family disputes we have, they arise to do with grandchildren, aunties and uncles, that kind of thing. So intra-family is around trying to keep families together, attending to family relationships. Medical issues to do with breakdown in communication, again, mismatch of expectation, best interest cases. So we've worked with a lot of the high profile best interest cases, no names mentioned, where there is basically in those high stress, high fear environments, where things are said that people regret, or decisions are taken which are not popular with both sides, or people's conduct is an issue as well. These are the kinds of medical disputes that we deal with. Again, not compensation, not the more litigious end of medical disputes, more to do with promoting a good dialogue between the parties who are involved in a dispute, particularly around withdrawal of care, particularly around best interest cases, particularly around stuff to do with the quality of treatment, which leads into the next one, which is around complaints. So interpersonal disputes around complaints, where at the heart of a complaint, quite often there is the way that you spoke to me, or the fact that nobody called me back, or the fact that it took you 6 weeks to come out to me, this kind of thing, where it's around the communication, the dialogue around people's conduct, their behaviour towards one another, and where that has caused a breakdown in the working relationship between the complainant and the body complained against. So all of those examples, very, very broad, we reckon account for around about 80% of the applications of mediation. So a good 4 out of 5 disputes would probably fall into one of those categories that I've just mentioned. And we call that, broadly speaking, interpersonal mediation. So what's it for? Well, interpersonal mediation is, as I've just implied with all of those examples, it's to bring about a better conversation between the two parties. It's when we've got to the point where communication has stopped, where there's a bit of mind reading, or what we therapists call projection between the two parties, where they are starting to see everything the other party does as wrong, where they are reading volumes into any innocent words or actions of the other party, and where they begin to have this very negative expectation of anything that the other party can say and do. When we get to that point, conversation breaks down. Quite often social media gets involved, other factions get drawn in, people take up sides and take up positions, and they might be at the point of thinking about formal action against one another, and our application of interpersonal mediation is to bring about a better conversation so that we can head off a formal process. So in a workplace dispute, that would be the grievance process, for example, or the dignity at work procedure. In neighbourhoods, that might be county court action. It might even be with tenancy disputes down the road of evictions, or rent strike if it comes from the tenant side. With medical disputes, again, that might be a court case, and so on. So heading off those formal processes by bringing about a better conversation, which is not just intended to mend the current situation, but actually is intended to foster a better relationship between the two parties. So great thing about mediation, interpersonal mediation, is we're not just fixing the current situation, but we are attending to the ongoing dialogue between the two parties and ensuring that we've got something more robust to future-proof that working relationship. So the idea is transforming the relationship, not just fixing the current problem. Right. The thing is about mediation, it sounds great, doesn't it? But it has to be voluntary. We can't strong arm people into mediation. There's been quite a lot of discussion around the mandatory nature of mediation, particularly commercial sort of deal-making type processes, and mandating those through the courts. There's been quite a bit of a debate around that on LinkedIn just recently. From our point of view, mediation has to be voluntary and forever will. I think when we are forced into something, we tend to resist it. When we are told we have to do something, we tend to push back. And if people are not minded to try and get a good outcome from mediation or any other dispute resolution process, they're probably not going to get a good outcome from it. It's very easy to sabotage. It's very easy for people to tick a box to come into mediation or a mediation type process, not participate, not make any effort to make it work, and it won't work. So we need that voluntary participation. We need some goodwill with the parties who walk towards this process and try and make it work. And the chances are it will. There's a very good success rate for mediation. One thing that makes mediation work is by keeping private what people say and to a large extent do within the mediation process. So with a few exceptions, rare exceptions, what people say in private to the mediator is kept private, and the conversation between them won't be disclosed by the mediator, won't be reported back to anybody else. We don't retain notes, we don't make any recording, including when we do it on video conferencing. So the whole process is confidential. The point about that is that people can speak openly, they can say what's really on their minds, they can talk about that aspect of the dispute that really bugged them. It was the way you spoke to me. It was this when you passed me in the corridor. It's the fact you didn't invite me to that do. It was the fact that in the neighbourhood dispute that you pile your compost up against the fence even though I've moved it back. It's the fact that in that medical dispute, etc., 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 you got my child's name wrong several times. There are often things which to a detached observer might seem small, but actually when you are embroiled in a conflict, lots of things that would otherwise objectively seem small actually are a big deal and very upsetting and very annoying sometimes. So we keep private what people say to us in mediation so that they can dig deep and tell us really what is at the heart of their dispute and the heart of their upset. And that way we can be sure that the mediator gets a good handle on both parties' needs and interests so that we can help them through the process. And the other essential thing about mediation, it's got to be future focused. So we can't change the past. People are probably not going to agree about the past, and we accept that. We hear from parties their differing narratives about how they got to this point on the day of the mediation, and we value that, we'll empathise with that, we want them to talk about that. They don't necessarily have to agree about what's happened up to this point and probably won't, but our endeavour as interpersonal mediators is to focus on the future and to help people agree about what's going to happen differently starting from now on. So these are the three essential building blocks of mediation: the voluntariness, the confidentiality, and the future focus. Suitability of mediation. Sounds great, doesn't it? Works for a lot of things, works for most cases where I've described there, where it's about the relationship. What we're not particularly suited for with this particular model is around financial legal issues that would be at the heart of commercial disputes, where there's an element of legal advice or subject knowledge such that people are in effect doing what we would call soft arbitration. Soft arbitration is around hearing from both sides in a dispute and that practitioner either offering some legal opinion, whispered or otherwise, and actually floating a range of settlement options that practitioner, in their knowledge, believes might be acceptable to a court, were it to go to court. So what we're doing in this kind of mediation with commercial disputes, or this kind of process, is we're anticipating what might happen at court, taking into account the costs and the delay and the stress that would be involved in going to court, and getting people to come up with a pragmatic commercial solution. It requires this sort of level of legal knowledge. People call this mediation, we call it soft arbitration or early neutral evaluation. But essentially it's where there is a dispute, often to do with an amount of money that needs to be paid, compensation or a refund, or some goods or services that have been missupplied, where there's not necessarily any ongoing relationship. So with these kinds of commercial disputes, interpersonal is not really the model that we would use or that should be used. With divorce and separation cases, of course, it's a rather different model. It's become more of a quasi-legal process, the divorce and separation type mediation, which is fine. and really suits a lot of situations where couples are splitting up. But it does need a different model, which is, as I say, a quasi-legal model. There's a lot of stuff that comes into the public domain within family mediation, and it does require full financial disclosure of both sides, which is a formal process that brings their assets and finances into the public domain. And quite often now, family mediation is practiced by legal practitioners, and again, fine if it works and that's what people want. Legal practitioners with some knowledge of mediation who will help essentially to produce a consent order between the separating or divorcing couple, which will then go across the desk of a judge, and he or she will be happy to sign it off. So having that legal knowledge makes sure that the consent order is something that will be signed off and that ticks various boxes to do with family law, including what happens with the children. So the thing is with divorce and separation mediation, it affects more than just the people in dispute. So it does affect children if there are any, and other interested parties in some cases. There's a but, which is that some commercial disputes and divorce and separation cases, it's often about the underlying relationship. So we do work with commercial disputes using our model, but essentially it's to get people talking. And once they're talking, they can come up with their own solutions. We don't offer legal advice or legal opinion. We're not positioned to do so. We are not legal practitioners. But we have worked a lot of commercial disputes where it's about the dialogue breaking down in between the two parties. We've also worked with couples, but again, it's about addressing the dialogue between the two parties. We don't attend to financial disclosure. We're not producing consent orders. We're not there to offer any legal opinion or legal advice. What we are there to do as interpersonal mediators is to bring about a dialogue between parties, which might be all of the examples I gave earlier to do with neighbours and tenants and workplace, etc. We can also apply that to places, commercial disputes or relationship breakdown, but just to look at the dialogue and the relationship, not the legal and financial issues. Okay, that's that. Well, let's have a look at the model, illustrating this in a slightly different way with our action-packed cartoon. Sorry, it's my mug again in this, where we're just looking at the various stages of the mediation model. It might be familiar to some of you, and I can see amongst the many people we've got on today from the UK and from much wider afield as well. Some of you have trained with us. Nice to have you here today, and I believe there's some people who are thinking of training with us and a few interested parties as well. So it's great to have you all here. Some of this will be familiar to you, but let's have a look what happens. Well, we've got two parties in this dispute, a workplace dispute, just to keep it simple. What happens first of all is that after a bit of paperwork and a bit of few things that have to be ticked off, signed off, we have the initial contact with party one. Doesn't matter who goes first, but we have a session with the party, typically hour and a quarter or so, where we hear from that party their perspective on the dispute and get a handle on what it is they need to achieve, and get their commitment to come back to a joint conversation with the other side. So here we are meeting with party one in this particular dispute, somebody called Heather. And once we've met with her and the mediator has had a bit of thinking time, then we turn our attention to the second party and tell me what's been happening, he says. So the initial contact with the second party, again, we don't disclose from the first party to the second what's been said. We're not passing on things that the first one said. We just want to do exactly the same session again, second time with party two, to hear from her in this case what's going on from her perspective and what she needs to get out of this mediation process, and get her commitment to coming back to a joint meeting. If they don't want to come back to a joint meeting, this is one of the things we'll think about at stage 3. There's a bit of thinking about the two parties there. We might decide to keep them separate and shuttle between them. These days we might decide to do it on Zoom. The whole thing might take place on Zoom. But we're prepared to work on the dispute. We make some decisions around, are the issues indeed mediable? Are there things that we can mediate for? Do they have the authority to settle these things, or does it involve any other parties? And do we have things that they wish to attend to? And also they might have told us things in private that they've said they don't want to disclose in front of the other party, and that will be part of the mediator's thinking around how to plan and organise the process and whether we can indeed go ahead with it. That's our stage 3. Into stage 4, this is where we get the two parties together. The face-to-face session begins. We hear from the two parties separately, individually, with some uninterrupted time, where they talk about one another. It might be harsh. It might be she's so controlling, or she's a nightmare, she can't do a job, she acts like she's my boss, always checking up on me, she's always going off on long breaks, gossiping on the phone, etc. So they'll have a lot to say about each other. We have some rules for this joint meeting. It's not a free-for-all. Rules are basically nothing that's personally abusive or attacking, and certainly no talking over each other. And then we try and make an agenda. So we're trying to contain the dispute, allowing this offloading. They've already had some offloading in the individual meeting, but a bit of offloading in the face-to-face session as well, in front of one another, and then making an agenda, trying to deduce from what both parties bring, what are the essential topics that need to be discussed. Once we've got that agenda, we will work through the issues, exploring and working on those issues. The mediator gives equal time to both parties. The mediator's job is to empathise with both parties' predicaments, to think about their interests, their underlying needs and imperatives, and to help some good dialogue to take place within the mediation session. There will often be strong emotion, as we can see in the picture there for number 5. And we're happy with that. I think to get to the heart of any dispute, we need to have a good balance of emotion and reason. And quite often people come in all emotion, and we need to urge them to do a bit more thinking. And sometimes they come in all reason, very logical, and we may encourage them to just have a think about how they've been impacted by the dispute. That meeting of minds between the two parties is essentially where the resolution will take place. We're looking for a behavioural agreement to come out of mediation, or in the middle part here, around about stage 5, there is a lot of exchange, which may be emotional, it may be reasonable, it may be unreasonable. We have the ability of the mediator to contain that and to get something future focused and behaviour focused out of that. So as we start to get into stage 6 with building agreements, we have parties who come up with ideas about what they could do differently. Parties come up with suggestions, parties come up with requests to one another about what could happen, and here they are making a couple of suggestions there in stage 6. So timings, this would typically be a joint session, would typically be in an afternoon, so 1 o'clock till 4:30, something like that, which is enough. And generally speaking, round about 4 o'clock of that afternoon, if things have gone well, as they often do, we would be talking about writing up just a record of the points of agreement the two parties have got to. It's not a formal document. They can keep it private if they want to. It doesn't have to be shown to anybody. The referrer of the situation will often like to see the agreement, and with the parties' consent we can do that. But the mediator's job here is to deduce from the dialogue that we've promoted between the two parties what it is they're going to do differently starting tomorrow. Put that into the agreement. We agree a follow-up period, so that when they go away and start to try and implement this agreement, the two parties will check back with them and see how they've got on, and whether the agreement has actually worked, if they've managed to implement it, and if there's any further support needed. And that's really the stage 7. So we close that down, and then we'll follow up afterwards. There they are, signing the agreement, symbolically signing it just to say they agree to the form of words. Again, there's no formality and no binding quality to this agreement. It's simply a behavioural agreement around acceptable conduct between the two parties starting from now. So that very, very briefly is the 7-stage model, and this goes over the course of a 40-hour training. Typically a 40-hour training course will cover that whole thing, all the skills and the qualities, all the things we need to bring to bear as mediators, a few things that can go wrong and what we do about it, and how you would set up, manage and conclude a mediation session. That's all part of your training. So I'll come on to training, talking about you getting a training course if you want to become an interpersonal mediator. Let's have a think about that just now. What I would suggest, we would strongly suggest, is whether you train with us or anybody else, is make sure that you get a recognised qualification. Okay, there's a lot of courses out there which are not particularly recognised or valued. You've got to be careful, you've got to shop around. Bit of a minefield, and there's been an explosion in training courses. We started in '99, as I mentioned earlier. There were about 5 mediation training providers in the field. Now, if you do a Google search on mediation training, you'll get 5 screens of 10 companies per screen. So it's very, very many more organisations. Just got to be a bit careful where you're going. Look for external accreditation. Look for accreditation by an academic body like Ofqual. Any credible qualification should be there on Ofqual's register of regulated qualifications, the framework for regulated qualifications. So it should be sitting there alongside A-levels and GCSEs and so on as a proper qualification. Also look for a company that's got quality assurance. Again, a lot of companies setting up could be, we don't know about the quality there, so look for quality assurance, a recognised quality standard for that company, whatever that might be. Okay, so an externally accredited qualification, preferably on Ofqual's framework of qualifications, and a recognised quality assurance standard as well. That's the first thing. Second thing, make sure it's the right type of mediation. So I've said a lot about interpersonal so far. Commercial is different. Commercial mediation is veered off a little bit since the influx of legal practitioners into the field in the late in the noughties, really mid to late noughties. There's now this thing people call civil mediation. Be a bit careful. Civil mediation, it's a bit like evaluative settlement conferencing. It's a bit like neutral evaluation of people's disputes. It sort of depends who's practicing it. It can be a bit like soft arbitration. So just be wary of what you're choosing. If you want to do workplace disputes, if you want to do neighbourhood disputes, if you want to work with intra-family disputes, medical cases like best interest cases, and we're working with complaints, you need interpersonal training. Okay, but if you want to do deal making with people who have got a financial dispute, that's commercial, and family mediation is separate again, very separate again. So that is a discipline all of its own, with a separate accrediting body. So just be careful you're getting the right type of mediation. Quite likely it's interpersonal mediation that you need, and as I said before, that covers around about 80% of all disputes. But just be careful that it's the right type that you're getting. And look for post-course support as well. Again, a lot of organisations, I'm sorry to say, will train you and then leave you. Check what you're going to get, because you want to know that you're not just getting a training course and certificate on the wall looks very nice, but you need to know that if you're trying to become an interpersonal mediator, you need more than just the piece of paper. There needs to be some post-course support structures, and check what's included with the training as well. So I would say your initial steps in becoming an interpersonal mediator should be that. And like I say, if you train with us or anybody else, just check that these boxes are ticked. Next thing you want to do when you've trained is gain experience. Now, if you're working as a freelancer, what you want to do is exploit existing connections. So if you're already working, doing coaching, doing counselling, doing mentoring, doing facilitation, you'll have connections. Exploit those connections. Most organisations in the UK might benefit from time to time with having an external mediator. So if you've already got your foot in the door, if you've got good relationships with organisations or contacts within organisations, use those and exploit what you've already got. That would be the first thing if you want to get cases. Also, with organisations, to build that trust, it can be a good idea to do a free case or two. People will choose a mediator that they can trust. And if you can demonstrate, A, you can actually do what you say you can do, and B, that you can get good results from that, and demonstrate, your credibility in terms of managing confidentiality well, holding good boundaries, etc. And I think showing is so much better than telling. So if you can do a free case or two, which can be a bit nerve-wracking, so when you've done your training, it's a good idea to buddy up with somebody as well and think about doing a co-mediation to get you started. Work with another mediator, two-handed mediation. It's quite a recognised, quite a common way to work, particularly when you're getting started. Work with a trusted co-mediator through your first couple of cases, just to get your confidence, just to embed your training into your practice and gain a bit of confidence to get you out the door. And think about promotion, of course. That's a generic marketing exercise. Promoting your services using a website, social media, writing articles, etc. I don't go into that here. This is no matter what you're marketing, you would need to do this. So if you are marketing your skills as a drama coach or your skills as a painter and decorator, you still need to do the same kind of thing. So you need to do that promotion and generic marketing of your services. Think about your unique selling proposition. What's your niche? What's unique about your offering? If you're from the publishing field, maybe you can offer mediation between publishers and authors. If you're from the accountancy field, I know for a fact, because we've trained some people from that field, there is work. There's lots of work going on there, either between accountants and their clients, or some stuff involving HMRC as well. But there's a niche. There's probably some subject area that you might be able to specialise in, where you've already got experience, you already speak the language, and you've got to think about what's unique about your offering. So I'll just pause for a second. We've had a question from Anthony by email, who says, what's the typical current going rate for mediators? Well, for proper mediators, capital M, offering the kind of thing I'm talking about today, the range of charges might certainly be north of about £750 for a day, and might go up to around about £1,500 a day, something like that. So between £750 and £1,500, that's for real mediation, capital M. £1,500 might be a bit expensive, actually, maybe a bit less than that, £1,400. There are a lot of legal practitioners who charge pretty well the same as they would charge for legal practice for doing this sort of deal-making process that's sometimes described as civil mediation. But again, just be careful about what you're getting and what it is you're paying for. But I would guess, Anthony, somewhere around about that, $750 to $1,400. I'll come down a bit more, $750 to $1,300 would be a fairly typical price. Thanks, Anthony. It's good. Very practical question, thinking about it. You've got overheads though, Anthony, of course. You've got to travel, sometimes pay for venues. There's indemnity insurance to pay for, etc., etc. You've got to recoup the cost of your initial training investment. So it's not all profit. Right, second part of what I want to talk about today is if you're part of an in-house service. So if you're working within a large employer, and in-house mediators will often be recruited to form a panel within larger employers, by which I mean 500 plus employees. So there are a lot of in-house mediation services within local authorities, NHS trusts, universities, the emergency services, larger employers. And if you're working as a mediator as part of an in-house service, you're on an internal panel within this organisation. What you need to do, similar to the freelance situation, is you need to promote and publicise the service internally. We've set up a lot of in-house mediation services, and we find when people come to us and say, you know what, we need to increase the throughput of cases, what shall we do? What you need to do is do some internal marketing. It goes out of people's minds. Mediation is something we only use very rarely. Most people would never use it. Very few people would use it more than once. So you have to keep it in people's consciousness, in people's minds. So if you're working as an in-house mediator, you still need to do a lot of promotion and publicity in order that people know you're there and know what it's about. Good idea within an organisation is to have a mediation champion. So somebody who people equate with mediation, somebody who's got the big red flashing phone on the desk that you can call if there's a potential case or you need some advice about whether to use mediation or not, and the person who would be the gatekeeper into the mediation service. So a mediation champion, an individual, and he or she can open and close the gate to allow cases through, but also advise people and potential referrers and potential participants in mediation about what's involved and how to go about it. And the other thing I really like is running awareness raising events. You can't beat a demonstration of mediation. Having done this for nearly 25 years, I think actually getting in front of people and showing them with some human beings what happens in a mediation, I think is a really good idea. It works very well. And that's something that we've got one of those coming up, incidentally, very soon. I'll tell you a bit more about that at the end. A mediation showcase, where you actually demonstrate to your potential audience, here's what mediation looks like. And there's seriously no substitute for that. Any amount of videos, leaflets, simulations, Q&As, stuff on the internet. Yeah, if you can run a live demonstration, that really gives people a clear idea about what it looks like. And again, in-house mediators use co-mediation to help build your confidence, work in pairs. And I would also say, after you've done a few cases and you're starting to embed your skills and starting to develop your own style of mediation, especially, get consultative support. When I came in this field 25 years ago or so, as a therapist, as psychotherapists, we have to have consultative support. You're obliged to have case supervision and consultative support, somewhere where you can go along and talk about your clinical cases as a psychotherapist. Get some feedback, get some support, help to ensure that you're working within the rails of what should be, of where you should be working. And that same model, that same idea about consultative support, to my mind, applies to mediation. I was quite surprised when I came in the field that people don't routinely get supervision, consultative support. We strongly recommend it as a way to ensure you're working safely and ethically, ensure that you're developing your skills as a mediator as well. Okay, so you're trained, you're gaining experience. Third thing is about gaining credibility. So why should people buy off you? Why should people use you as a mediator? One thing I'd said is about doing free cases and proving that you're a mediator that your potential clients can trust. But also credibility. I think when, especially the way the market is right now, if a potential purchaser of services has a choice about which mediator or mediators they might employ or use the services of, I would suggest you need a professional body's endorsement. So we offer accredited mediator status for people that complete our course and complete the assessment on the course. It's a level 4 course, which means it's around the same level of complexity as the first year of an undergraduate degree. We also are affiliated with the International Mediation Institute. So the International Mediation Institute is a recognised body around the world and has a level of credibility that most purchasers would recognise. Get a recognised code of practice, so any potential purchaser who said, well, show me what your code of practice is or what your ethics are or what I can expect, you want to be able to put your hand on their code of practice, and that's something again that we can offer for people that train with us. Other organisations do as well, but code of practice, very, very important. Go for the repeat referrals. We have, after all these years of doing it, a good half of our business is people who've used us several times in the past. So we get people coming back to us again and again and again. Repeat referrals, the reason for that is it's a lot based on trust. So once a purchaser knows they can trust a particular mediator or mediation provider, they'll come back to that one again and again. So repeat referrals, repeat business means keeping in mind that while you're doing a great job as a mediator, there's another referral down the road. And for those of you who want to take this on more as a profession, it's a good idea to keep a log of your cases, keep a record of work that you do, get feedback off your participants, and you can then work towards IMI certified status, which means I've done more than just the training. I'm not just IMI qualified, I am IMI certified, which means I have a track record of some good quality work with good feedback. And this can be interrogated and proven in a portfolio, which allows you to achieve this IMI certified status. Okay, so that's the credibility bit. You've trained, you've gained experience, you've got some credibility. You'll be ready to go out and do some mediation, I hope. And that's a lot of what I want to say today about becoming an interpersonal mediator. Okay, we've got a question or two. Use the YouTube chat box right now if you've got a question that you'd like to ask. We've got one from Lorraine Thomas. Hi, do you think mediation is in demand? How can a student go about starting mediation as a business? See above, Lorraine, all of the above. But I do think mediation is in demand, but I also think, Lorraine, that there is a massive underuse of mediation. We are always surprised, continue to be surprised, when we do exhibitions and fairs and shows and the showcase things, such as I'm about to tell you, and people come up to us and go, oh, we've never used mediation in our organisation. And I think, really? Might be a large employer, might be people who have shed loads of grievances going on and they've never used mediation. So yes, there's a demand, but I think there's still a big job to be done around educating people as to what mediation is, why you should use it and how to go about it. And unfortunately, like I said right at the top, there are several processes which are called mediation, which are not really that. So I'm not surprised if the market is a bit confused, because this word gets chucked around for all sorts of processes. So yeah, there's a demand. And as a student going about starting mediation as a business, well, first of all, Lorraine, I would suggest find the training course on the basis of the things I've said to you already there. But also, before you even do your training course, think about where your first referrals are going to come from. What I like to see is that when people come on the training, they go, right, when I've done my training and got my qualification and passed the assessment, I know where I'm going to go to get my first few cases. And that's brilliant, because you want to hit the ground running after the training. What you don't want to do really is do your training and then start to think about, all right, I wonder where I might get my cases from. So line up your cases, Lorraine, go for the training such as I've mentioned there, get some experience, establish your credibility, and be prepared to educate people. Be prepared to educate potential referrers as to what it is. Don't suppose that people know what mediation is. And be aware, I guess I'm repeating myself, but be aware that there are a lot of processes that people call mediation, which are actually not mediation. But it's a great question, Lorraine. Thanks very much. Another one from Carl. Carl says, I'm doing some mediation work for a local community-based charity and wanting to move into workplace. Any advice on how I find more relevant experience? Well, it's interesting, Carl, because a lot of community mediation services that work with volunteers is a great place to go just after your training to try and get some experience. And a lot of those community mediation services offer or are beginning to offer workplace mediation. But I think there's a lot of similarities between doing neighbourhood and community mediation and doing workplace. And when I started out, I did a couple of years working as a volunteer with a community mediation service in the West Midlands, mediating disputes between families around access, around common areas, around DIY, noise, pets, some sort of inter-family disputes, extended family disputes involving lots of people as well. Very good way to cut your mediation teeth. So I would say, Carl, it's really good experience, and talk about conflict. So, you know, it's our emphasis here at UK Mediation is on looking at the psychology of conflict. What's going on underneath the bonnet, and what can we offer as impartial mediators with this emotional intelligence that we need in order to work with conflict. A good deal of empathy, good deal of understanding how we can build dialogue between people who are essentially afraid. So that's the key thing, Carl. And I think those things are common with community and with workplace mediation. So I hope you can transfer those skills over and gain the confidence to be able to do that. Nice question. Thanks very much. Mary, hello, has 20 plus years of experience of academic, community and voluntary sector work, thinking of pivoting those skills towards mediation. Is this a reasonable basis for becoming an interpersonal mediator? You bet, Mary, perfect. So as I was saying earlier, it's a nice example to illustrate the point I made before, which is what's your niche? What niche or area or specialist skills do you have that you could bring to bear in your work as an interpersonal mediator? So academic, we have a lot of work within the university sector, within the FE sector, great deal of work there. So as an interpersonal mediator, you would be able to work with complaints, you'd be able to work with grievance type issues, allegations of poor management, low-level bullying and harassment, and also student type issues, not just sort of neighbourhood type disputes that can arise in student accommodation, but also students having issues with, for example, postgrad students having issues with supervisors, students having issues with other students when they're required to work in work groups when they go on their degree courses, and so on. So there's a wealth of work in academia for sure. And then community and voluntary, absolutely. So charities are, we do a lot of work with charities, a lot of work with charities. Often with workplace type disputes, people who are falling out with colleagues, falling out with managers or reports, or having issues with their organisation in general. So yeah, very wide areas of application. So I think, is this a reasonable basis for becoming an interpersonal mediator? It's an ideal basis for becoming an interpersonal mediator, Mary. So very best of luck with that, and thanks for your question. Yeah. Okay, I do try and keep to time. Never do it, but here we go. Around the corner, we've got this event that I've alluded to once or twice, a live mediation showcase. So a chance to come and see what mediation actually looks like with some real three-dimensional, in-the-flesh people. A link appeared in the chat box there, so you can click on that link and sign up for the showcase. Places are limited because it's a physical event in a room with only a certain amount of space, so do come along. It's at Fenchurch Street in London, very easy to get to, right next to the tube station, Between 1 and 3:30, the event itself will fill about an hour of that, and then there's time for Q&A and a cup of tea with us as well, and to meet our team as well. So live demonstration, real people in the flesh, mediation, here's what it looks like. Chance to ask us a lot of questions, either about the mediation process itself or about how you might become a mediator as well. So do come along to that, do sign up. Like I say, places are limited. It'd be great to see you there to come along for our live mediation showcase. Okay, in April. That's that. We may see you there, or we may see you elsewhere. We may see you on YouTube, on LinkedIn, around Twitter, or check out Facebook as well. All the ways you can stay in touch with us, see what we do. If you want to see other webinars, if you check out our website as well, you'll find a whole library of other webinars on there about all sorts of topics to do with mediation, going back quite a few years. So lots of stuff to watch and to listen to, and hopefully come along to the showcase as well and meet us in the flesh. Okay, that was us for today, becoming an interpersonal mediator. Thanks ever so much for that. Look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Look forward to seeing you in London in April. Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend and see you soon.